Hi there, my name is Gerald Wong. I am a trainer and facilitator with UPA Consulting. I am actually shooting this video today to support you with some tips and tricks over how to lead your remote teams a little bit more effectively. So if you are curious about my credentials, I'm going to ask of you to go to this link over here. All right, that will lead you over to my LinkedIn profile, and you should be able to see my credentials over there. So the reason why I'm making this video is because some people have requested of me, to support them with this information. There are, by and large, a lot of teams who have needed to shift from a physical working space over to a virtual space for their to continue their work as part of their business continuation plan. And what happened as a result of that is that uh, instead of work-life balance, a lot of our team members have gone into the phenomenon of work-life integration. So what that means is this: we used to be able to compartmentalize, the areas of our lives. We have an office to go to, and once we are at the office, we were able to sit down and totally focus on our work. And when we go back home, we know to shift our roles from that of a team member or a person who's working into that of a father or a mother or a sibling or a son or daughter. So in this particular period of time, what is happening to a lot of us is that these two roles are being meshed together. And as we are trying to work from home, we've still got little feet pattering around, screaming for our attention, or some other things in the family that needed our attention as well. Otherwise, to be completely honest, for a lot of us, the word in our head is the word distraction. So then, what do we do about it? And as the team leader, how can we help our team to make that transition a little bit smoother, a little bit more fluently? So the tips and tricks I'm going to be sharing with you are not conceptual. They are actually really practical. They will be something that you can apply straight away with your team. Right, so stay tuned, and let's move on to the first tip. Right, let me first of all define what a working agreement is. A working agreement is a set of behaviors that the team agrees to abide by when they are in interaction with one another. Now, as a general rule of thumb, the list of behaviors on the agreement needs to be clear. It needs to be in the form of an action or an action statement. For example, being punctual for work or being punctual for my online meeting. Now, this is clear action. If your meeting is scheduled to start at 9 a.m. and I come into the meeting at 8:59 a.m., I'm good. But if I come in at 9:01 a.m., everybody knows I broke the working agreement. It's clear. All right, there are no blur lines, there are no gray areas about it. At the same time, it is okay to sometimes leave a certain behavior a little ambiguous, especially when you're talking about using values as an action or behavior to uphold. An example of this would be listening to one another with an open mind. Now, if that's the case, what you and your team need to talk about is the set of specific behaviors that defines what listening with an open mind will look like, feel like, or sound like. An example of the sharing with your team will sound like this. If I'm listening with an open mind, I allow my team member to finish voicing out her opinion. I do not refute or reject the opinion until it is properly talked or thought through. Now, that is a very clear elaboration of what listening with an open mind is. This is what you need to be listening out for, and seek agreement or consensus with your team on the agreed behavior. Another general rule of thumb is the 3-5 rule. You will want to have 3 or 5 points in the agreement if you want everybody to remember and practice the behaviors. So why do I recommend having 3 or 5 behaviors on the list at most? Well, why not 4? Why not more? There are a few reasons behind it. The first reason is 3 or 5 are magic numbers our brains remember. that our brains like. You have too little, you do not have a holistic enough of an agreement to support one another. If you have too many, chances are that the team will forget what they have agreed to, and then we would have set them up for failure. In fact, 5 behaviors to remember to practice will already be pushing it. Don't believe me? Try practicing 5 new behaviors at the same time with your own family for a day. See how many behaviors you remember to do at the end of it. Now imagine 7 or more. Okay, now imagine doing this with your team. So don't be greedy and try to squeeze a lot in. It will be counterproductive. Especially at the beginning, you will want something that everyone can remember and do, as compared to a lot and nobody remembers anything. Now, having said that, I am also not saying that, okay, you need to stick to 5 and 5 only or 3 only. As your team gets more and more comfortable with practicing the behaviors, you feel free to add on. Just take note, if a new team member joins you, you will probably want to scale it back again or work with that particular new team member, with 3 or 5 first, and slowly onboard them with the rest of the behaviors that you've added along the way. The last rule of thumb for creating working agreements is that it must be created in the spirit of moving your team forward rather than backward. You want the behaviors to support every team member's work, not hold them back. A negative example of this is checking in with the team with an online meeting six times a day. You will probably spend more time talking in meetings. Some of you might already be familiar with this concept or the idea of using a working agreement with your team. And some of you will probably have already been doing it with your team, in your office, and you thought it convenient to just port it over from your physical office, into this remote environment. Now, if you had done that, please don't. It does not work. Some of the agreements, some of the behaviors that you listed in your pre-business continuation plan could work. It could be ported over, but some of them may not, because the behaviors that you agreed to was based on a physical working space. It is not based on a virtual space. So if you have already an existing working agreement, it might be a good idea to revisit it with your team. Find out with your team together, figure out with your team together, on whether the behaviors on your existing working agreement is still feasible for you to carry out or not. Is it still realistic for you to carry out or not? If not, take away some, add on some to make it a little bit more robust for yourself. The really big question is this: have you taken into consideration the current work-life integration for yourself and for your team members, and worked your working agreement according to it? Okay, the next tip I'd like to share with you revolves around goals and goal setting. Have you thought about setting goals for your team, or having your team set goals for themselves? Now, I'm not talking about business goals here. Yes, business goals are important, but at the same time, there is also another aspect of goal setting that is just as important as your business goals, and that is our team's individual, personal goals. Now, to state the obvious, goals gives us something to work towards, especially if the goals are our own. It gives us a sense of urgency. Now, goals are even more important right now in this period of great transition. It allows us to have something to look forward to because it creates hope. And the thing is this: if your team does not have hope, the motivation to do something else other than survival does not happen. Especially for those of our team members who has moved from a full-time working physical space to a home-based space. Now, those of us who have our own families will know very well that working from home with our family members around, especially the young ones, provides no end of distractions to our working routine. So therefore, it is important that we support our team members in making sense, in getting order out of this new environment of work. So here's an exercise for you to work out with. In a moment, I'm going to give you 3 questions, And I'd like you to take the time to reflect on the 3 questions for yourself. Now, the same 3 questions, okay, can then be used after this video for you to replicate it with your team members. But for now, I'd like you to do it for yourself first. Question 1. What is a personal or family-oriented goal that you can set for yourself for the next 2 months? Question 2. How does it look like, feel like, or sound like when you have achieved your goal? Question 3. What would be the impact that you would have created for yourself, your loved ones, at home, your team members when you have achieved the goal? In a moment, I'm going to shift the screen to blank, and I will list the 3 questions down. When you see that screen, please pause the video, get a notebook, get a piece of paper and pen, or even pull out your smartphone, and switch it over to the notes function. Copy down the 3 questions and take about 10-20 minutes, okay, to reflect on the 3 questions and answer them as honestly to yourself as possible. And once you're done with the 3 questions, press the play button again and we'll get back together. Welcome back. How did the reflections go for you? Were there any emotions that surfaced for you as you were doing the reflections? If there was it anxiety or fear for you? Was it worry? Was it a sense of hope that was coming up for you? Just be aware of those emotions. It's completely natural. It's part of the process as you do your reflections. Do be aware, just check in with those emotions. It's completely natural part of the process, okay, that you feel something if you do, and it's also completely natural if you don't feel anything. Alright? It's just part of the reflection process. There's no right or wrong to it. The important thing is that you notice them. And if you choose to go a little bit further, okay, you can check in with yourself again. Why? Why did I have those emotions? Was it because of something else? Okay, and as you peel it off layer by layer, like an onion, you will start to notice that you might have a certain belief or paradigm that could be driving it. Okay, so what I just went through with you is goal setting at its most basic level. Alright, now there are some things that you want to be taking note of, as you set about doing goal setting, especially as the team lead, doing it for your team members. Now the first thing you want to be taking note of is how clear are you of the goal? Is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it actionable? Is it realistic? And last but not least, is it timely? Now do pay attention to the time part. If you remember the question I asked, what is a personal or family-oriented goal you can set for yourself for the next 2 months? Now that is a generic question in terms of time. Yes, that is generic. As a general rule of thumb, the more specific you set your timeline to be, the higher the level of commitment you will instinctively want to put to it. And because we're humans being humans, right? What you notice as you start doing goal setting with your team members, when you start getting really specific about the timeline or the time frame, right? You also start seeing some resistance from them, okay? Especially if they're not used to goal setting. Now the reason is this: as human beings, normal functioning human beings, at our most automatic level, we usually don't want to be really specific about the commitment we want to make. Right? There are a few reasons behind it. Okay, for some of us, it's a matter of we fear. We fear what might happen if we had gotten the goal. What might happen after? Right? What's next for them? We are afraid of the what's next part. For some of us, we are actually either afraid of the success itself or the failure. Okay, what if I fail? What if I succeed? Right, so therefore, to be safe, we shy away from the commitment. Does that make sense? So notice if you felt something like that as well during your own reflections. Notice if you had similar thoughts. Now, again, it is not wrong. neither is it right. It's just part of being human, okay, because that's what we are. It's part of the human experience. Now, having said that, when you start doing it with your team members, do have the empathy with them as well, okay, because they are humans too, you know. That's why, okay, we all have that rich range of emotions and experiences as we move on in our lives. So I'd like to give you a classic example of what a SMART goal would really sound like. And for those of you who haven't realized, yes, we were talking about SMART, with the emphasis, with a little bit more emphasis on the time, to tease out the commitment, level. Because with the commitment, the urgency is also created, and that actually creates something for us to look forward to. Now, a classic example of how a SMART goal can possibly look or sound like would be like this. By June 21st, year 2020, 12 p.m., I will want to have spent, averaged out over a week's period from now until then, equal quality time spent with my wife, with my 2 kids, and with myself. So notice the specificity of the goal itself. I've got the time, June 21st, 2020, by 12 p.m. Okay, so what that means for me is, I got to make it happen. I have absolutely no backdoor for myself. I can't tell myself that it's 12 by 12:01 p.m. I don't have that excuse. This is part 1 of the video series of the tips and tricks for leading remote teams effectively. Stay tuned, I might be coming up with more videos. So until then, okay, check out my profile. I'll be linking it here again. If you're interested in learning more about the thinking, the principles behind the strategies that I've just shared with you, or if you're interested in learning how to use the rest of the strategies in building your team up towards a peak performing level, join me, for one of my future workshops, okay, or one of my virtual trainings. So until then, okay, bye for now. Okay, you take care of yourself. Stay safe.